Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. In this video we're going to talk about all things coats. I know theory can be a bit boring, but it is such an essential part in order to make professional looking coats, jackets, outerwear in general, because there are so many small itty bitty tiny pieces and knowledge and just things that you probably wouldn't think of if you haven't heard it before that go into the making of coats and jackets. I'm just gonna call it coats for the videos because... And these tiny bits of knowledge is what's gonna bring your coat to a whole new level. I wanted to start off with a coat block. And there's also a little bit of numbers and theory going into a coat block as well. I'm not going to show you how to make a coat block specifically because it's just the same steps that you need to do for a coat as you would do for a upper body block, and I will link my video about that right here in the eye. So the only thing that is different is the fullness or the addition that you put into your garment. The wider your coat should be in the end, the more fullness you have to put into your numbers. So I would say that between 3.5 to 7.5 centimeters, it's kind of open end, like however wide you want to have your coat, right? But I'm just gonna stick with 3.5 and 7.5. If you want to have a blazer, a very fitted tight blazer, go with an addition of 3.5. If you want to have like a looser blazer or a tight jacket, for example a leather jacket would be something that would use that fullness, go with 5 to 5.5 centimeters. And then if you want to have a coat, go with 7.5 centimeters or even more. I mean, the coats that are in stores nowadays are really wide, and they probably even have more than 7.5 centimeters in them. And they also don't have any darts, and they're very straight and very androgynous, which I kind of like. I really like this movement towards gender-free fashion, but that's beside the point. For this video, I will always be referring to a coat that has the addition of 7.5 centimeters in it. So make your bodice block and come back here. If you don't want to make your bodice block, do not worry. I went ahead and actually made the ultimate guide for coats and jackets, and I'm just gonna pluck the crap out of this because I'm really proud of it. This is everything that I will be sharing in this video, but even more detailed, and a step-by-step guide illustrated with everything that you need to know in order to make any design that you'd like. And I put this up on my Etsy store. This is 50 pages of boring but essential theory put into this document that you will get. And on top of that, I also went ahead and digitized the coat block with 7.5 centimeters fullness, a coat block without darts, 7.5 centimeter fullness, a two-parted sleeve for this coat specifically, so everything is already ready to go, and different variations of colors. And then on top of that, I also made the lining for the coat with and the coat without sleeves. So you'll get 9 PDFs full of patterns, a 50 pages document full of theory on how to make and sew your coat, and everything that I learned over the years, everything that I got taught over the years in terms of coats, how to sew it, how to make your lining, how to lower your armhole, how to put your interfacing onto your coat patterns, how to make your collar, everything literally, up until you have your final product in your hands and you can wear it. So I will put a link to my ultimate guide down in the description. I would really appreciate if you check it out and maybe even purchase it, because it's something that I had wished for having when I was in university, because it's really compact, but all the facts in it. And I will also in this video sometimes be referring to this or say like this is also in it, blah blah, so just so that you know what's up. But I do understand if you can't buy this or don't want to buy this, it's your choice. And I also wanted to give everybody kind of the similar chance on learning everything like that. So I actually went ahead and put a freebie on my website as well. It's not this, obviously, it's not as detailed, but I wanted to give you at least the written down instructions for a color and a label color as well. And obviously for the code base block, you can go ahead and use the video I already linked. I quickly wanted, before I continue, also share the additions and how I broke them up on my size chart. So this, you all know this size chart. This is a download that you can just get on my website. It's for free. I've used it plenty of times. Very, very helpful for pattern constructing. Down here at the bottom, you'll find a fullness spot. And I put 7.5 centimeters in here, as I already said. You need to split the 7.5 centimeters up into 3 different spots, which would be back width, armhole width, and breast width. I put 2 centimeters in my back width, 3.3 centimeters in my armhole width, and 2.2 centimeters in my breast width. And then on top of that, which is something rather important for bigger garments or outerwear garments in general, because you put so much fullness into this garment, 7.5 centimeters is a lot of fullness. You'll also have to put a little bit of fullness into your back neck to bust height, because that is the height of your shoulder all the way to your bust line. And as you can see, there is your arm in this. And for a wide pattern, you also want to give your armhole a little bit of height. And therefore you want to put a little bit of fullness into your RH, just for you to know. And then you can go ahead and do all of your measurements and your calculations that you need to do and make your base block for your coat. So once you've actually made a body pattern that is to your liking and it fits you, you can go ahead and do a few more design pieces, which for example would be a collar. So most coats have a collar. There are also coats without any collar. Those are the ones that just have this edge up here in the front. And collars come in many different types. So there would be shirt collars, standing collars, no collars at all, the lapel collar, and they most commonly have some sort of edge here. Then there's also the one without any edges. I will actually put that one with no edges onto my website as a freebie, and also a shirt collar onto my website as a freebie. So you can go ahead and download that for free. Link will also be down in the description. I'll actually insert here a video on how I constructed the 2 colors. So let's do that. So I decided to actually show you everything that you would do for constructing colors. I'm going to do 2 different types of colors here on the computer. There's no difference. You're doing the exact same on paper as I am doing here on the computer. And this is obviously just for you to know what steps you need to follow in order for you to get a color. So the first thing that we're actually going to do is a turn down collar. So those are the classic shirt collars that you know, but you can also use them for denim jackets. You can use them for court jackets, for anything actually that you want to put them on, to be honest. You just need to construct them to the size of your pattern. And I will be using the pattern for the coat block that I am including in my ultimate guide. This one is the version without darts. So the first thing you want to do is to actually widen your neckline by 1 centimeter in the front, and then by 1 centimeter in the shoulder area, so that you have a nice curve towards the front, and then curve it into a 0.5 in the center back. So this is a general thing for all collars. You always want to widen the neckline. And then for a turn down collar, you're actually making a new pattern piece, other than for label collars where you are working in your front piece. First things first, you want to measure your neckline in the front and your neckline in the back. And you want to add them together and actually draw a horizontal line across your paper, like so. And then you also want to put a notch where your shoulder line is. Once you've done that and drawn in your notch, you're actually going to measure 1.5 to 2.5 centimeters up in the center back, like so. And this is gonna be where your center back starts of your collar, so it's gonna be a bit curved. Then from this point on, you can draw your band width and your collar width. So I'm just gonna do a 3 centimeter color bandwidth. You can do between 2 to 4 centimeters, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to continue upwards. This is usually your color bandwidth plus an addition of around 1 centimeter, so that it folds nicely over top your color band, that it's not visible anymore. So I did 3 centimeters right there, so I'm just gonna do 4 centimeters upwards right here. And I'm also going to angle it to the left. So this is your center back. Once you've done that, you actually also want to go up in the center front a bit. Not a lot. I'm just going to do 5 millimeters, and then you can start drawing in your curve. So this is going to be some sort of an S curve, I guess. And then you want to measure from your center back your back neck width, which happens to be at the exact same spot where my notch is already. You want to measure your front line as well. Next up, I want to have a 90-degree angle up here. And then also, because my collar has to be closed somehow, we're going to make an over or an underlap. I'm gonna go up in a 90-degree angle up here, and then I'm gonna do 1.5 centimeters to the left. This is gonna be half the width of my button tape. In, for example, a shirt, you would do this, but also in a denim jacket or in jackets with this color in general, you would make an underlap and then have a button tape so that you can close it. And this is gonna be right here, and I'm gonna angle it at 90 degrees as well, and then ease it in a nice curve, or you can do an edge, or you can do whatever you want to design anywhere basically. Up here, I'm just gonna do this curve, and this is gonna be my center front, this right here. Once I've defined this spot right here, I can go ahead and draw in the curve of my collar band, which is going parallel to the curve I did on the underside. Once I've done this, I can go ahead and draw in my tip right here. And this is pretty much up to you how you want to draw this. You can make it really, really steep. You can make it at a 90-degree angle, literally any shape you want. I'm just gonna go ahead and actually just draw out a triangle like this. Just make sure that in the center back there is a 90-degree angle again, and that is basically your complete collar, which fits onto the base block. So there are always two types of colors, the outer and the inner color. That is for all the colors out there. You will always have two, and they differ by just a tiny bit, but a very important tiny bit. So do this to all of your color patterns that you are constructing, and you should get really, really beautiful, nicely folding colors, because you're going to hide the seam that you have on your colors where it's not visible. So for the outer color, if you think about it, this will be visible when you fold the collar down. So this piece right here, the tip of the collar, has to be a tiny bit bigger than my inner collar pattern. And what you would want to do, and I'm just going to draw on top of this in another color so you can see what I mean. You would actually go inward by just a tiny bit, between 2 to 5 millimeters on the tip right here, and then all the way across your upper edge all the way to your center back. So you would make your inner collar smaller, or you can go the other way around. You treat this, the collar that you just constructed, as your inner collar, and you make your outer collar a tiny bit bigger. And then there is this small rounded piece right here, and that one actually does not fold. So you have to do it exactly the other way, because the outer collar is here on the inside of your actual pattern piece. So you would want to do exactly the same that you just did for your collar tip, but the other way around. The important thing is though that you do this somehow, because then your collar will actually want to fold the way it's supposed to fold. If you have a collar, a shirt collar, label collar, whatever, that does not want to stay in the position it should stay, it's most likely because your pattern is not correct. And this might only be the 2 millimeters that you have to take out of your inner collar for it to lay nicely. That might just be that. So a tiny, tiny bit with a big, big effect. And this is your complete collar pattern. The next collar that we're going to do is a shawl collar. So this one will actually be constructed right onto the front piece, and we'll start with my breast dart. Actually, I will put my dart into my side seam. This is very easy to do on paper. You just cut into your dart and then into your side seam and rotate your dart close so it will open up right here. I'm just going to quickly do that on here. So once you've done that, it's going to look something like this, and you're going to go ahead and decide your overlap width. So I'm just going to do 2 centimeters. You're going to want to elongate that all the way to your hemline and then also angle it into your hem. And I'm gonna go up from my waistline 3 centimeters because I find that's a really nice start for your fold line, and continue to your shoulder line. Angle your shoulder line 1.5 centimeters to 2.5 centimeters to the left. I'm just going to do 2 centimeters. This is your side collar band width. And this and the line down here, you're going to want to connect. Also elongate your line a bit beyond your shoulder. You're going to measure from your neckline, your back neck length, which is right here, and angle it to the right at 90 degrees. Now we're going to do a little bit of calculation and measuring. So the formula that we'll be using is actually your back collar width. So I'm just going to do 5 centimeters. You can really decide what you want here. Plus or minus 1/10 x. Plus or minus just depends on where your crossing point of your folding line and your center front lays, if it's underneath or above your bust line. So if it's underneath, like mine is, it's minus. If it lays above your bust line, it's plus. You're gonna measure the distance, which is 8 centimeters in my case. So we're gonna do 5 centimeters minus 1/10 of 8 centimeters, which is 4.2 centimeters. And that's the number we're gonna want to measure on this line that we drew earlier to the right. At this point, you're gonna draw a helping line from this point to half of your side collar band width that you drew earlier. This is just to help you ease your neckline nicely into your point that you drew earlier. This is going to get angled to the left at 90 degrees, and you're going to measure your back collar band width, which is 0.5 centimeters more than your side collar band width. So I did 2 centimeters right here. So my back collar band width is 2.5 centimeters. I'm going to mark that spot. And then I'm gonna measure my collar width. So that's 5 centimeters. That's what we did for the formula, which is right there. And I can go ahead and ease this nicely into my folding line and also angle my collar right here at 90 degrees. This is going to be my center back, so everything there needs to be at 90 degrees so everything lays nicely. And then we're going to draw out our collar. So this is going to be a shawl collar, therefore it's going to be one nice line, and I'm going to go ahead and make a nice curve to here, and then from this point on I'm gonna start doing a parallel line to my fold line that I drew right here, and then ease it nicely into my point down there. So this is what your pattern is going to end up looking like, or something similar to this. And I actually will go ahead and measure from this line right here to the right on your shoulder line 4 centimeters and draw a nice curve all the way down to your hem. This doesn't have to be anything exact, it just happened to go through my breast point, or almost through my breast point. I'm actually going to make it go through the point, because then you can go ahead and lay your dart into this dividing seam. Now this dividing seam is going to divide your facing, which is this piece right here, and your lining. And I'm saying facing because you're gonna have to make a facing, then this is gonna be attached to your front piece as well, and then obviously this is gonna have a lining as well. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do exactly the same steps with making it smaller or bigger with this pattern here as well, and I'm going to show you the finished pieces. And this is what your collar patterns are going to look like. So you have your facing and you have your front of your body pattern. Both have the label attached to them, or the shawl collar, I guess. And this one actually here on the front is smaller because that's the one that lays on the inside. And this one on the facing is a bit wider. That's the same rule that I did with the collar up here. I just took 2 millimeters out of the collar, and yeah, so that's all. I also went ahead and did the back neck facing right there. This is just cut out of the neck line of your back, which is going to fit perfectly onto this right here, because you're going to end up having to sew this together. Obviously, you're going to have your lining. This is a lining piece right here as well, also the back lining, but that's something we're going to discuss about in just a second. Okay, so I know this was pretty fast now, but I actually went ahead and put this up in a document as well, which is for free on my website. It gives you the illustrated tutorial that I just put into this video as well, so you can go ahead and download that. This is just a very quick guide, so you have everything that I said in this video written down and you can follow, because obviously this video can only be so long, so I had to rush through this quite a bit. The next thing that we're going to talk about is actually the lining. Linings are generally put into coats. Obviously, you don't have to put a lining into coats. It all depends on what type of coat it is, when you want to wear it, if it's more like a spring summer jacket, what your design says, you know, all these things. It's very, very individual, but most commonly coats and jackets in general are lined, and the lining has a few small things that are different to the outer body patterns, which I'm gonna go through with you now, but for that we're actually gonna have a look into a coat. So I have my coat here, and as you can see, it is lined. And this, generally, the lining fabric is some sort of slippery fabric like rayon or acetate, but you can also work with cotton lining, but then you will have to put a different slippery type of lining into your sleeves, otherwise you can't really go into. As we're looking at this coat right here, you can see that this here in the front has the label collar attached, and then when you open it up, there is the same fabric on the inside as well. This is the front facing, and up here you can see the collar band, and then here the back neck facing. So these are all the types of patterns that go into the lining that are made out of your outer fabric. And then there's obviously also the lining pieces, which normally consists of just the front lining, which goes to your side seam, and then the back lining. Now the back lining has some sort of fold usually in the center back. Because this coat is very, very oversized and huge, there's not really a need for the fold. They put it in here nevertheless, but in tighter fitting garments you would put this fold all the way down to your hem in your lining, because this is for movement. So you would put this fold in, especially in tighter garments, so that you can move freely around, and that your fabric, your outer fabric, is not going to get all wrinkly on the outside because the lining is not working out perfectly fine. So you might have noticed that the hem of the lining is always a bit like wrinkly and doesn't really fit perfectly onto the body pattern. That's for a good reason, because if you don't make your lining fold over your hem facing of your outer pieces, it's gonna pull on the outer fabric as well, and it's going to make your outer fabric wrinkle up in the back. So you would normally put a small fold that is about 2 and 2, so 4 centimeters, somewhere around that, into your lining, which is just going to prevent your lining from tucking on your coat on the outside, which is not really nice. And usually I would say, in terms of seam allowances, there's a pretty easy rule that I go by with, which is put 4 centimeters seam allowance on your outer pattern and cut out your lining with 1 centimeter seam allowance normally. And this is going to make this 2 by 2 centimeter fold on the hem automatically. Another thing where the lining is differing from the outer body pieces is down here at the sleeve, so the lower part of your sleeve. Just also to prevent pulling and tucking on the outer pattern pieces, you would make your sleeve curve, your underarm curve at the side seams 1.5 centimeters to 2 centimeters higher on your lining pieces and your sleeve lining pieces. This is just going to leave a bit of room for movement as well. So there's always the need for movement in your lining piece in order for everything to look nice on the outside, to fall nicely on the outside, and so on. Let's continue to the whole sewing part. So sewing a coat is not really differing from sewing anything else, apart from when it comes to the end, because it's lined obviously, and because there are a few steps that you need to consider. Sew your outer body pieces together, and sew your facings together, and sew your lining pieces together. So you're gonna have 3 different pieces: outer body, facing, lining. And these pieces get put together as the next step. First, I personally like to put my facing onto my outer body pieces. So since everything is in one piece already, you just need to sew along the outer corner of your lapel, your collar, and then all the way on the other side, obviously, to the hem, and turn it over. There will be a few spots, for example, if you have a collar notch like this, where you have to cut into your seam allowance in order for it to fold nicely and to lay nicely once you turn everything over. You're gonna see where you have to cut. It's most commonly in the seam in here, and obviously you might want to cut your seam allowance down on the tips right there, and that's it. Then you want to iron it accordingly. So you want to iron the seam visibly onto the front piece in the collar area and the lapel area, all the way down to where your fold ends. Then you want to flip it around and you want to iron your seam onto the facing side. So just a tiny bit into the facing all the way to your hem, just for the seam not to be visible on the outside once you put everything on. This is also going to help your coat fall nicely and lay nicely, so your collar is already made to fall in a certain way because of your pattern and the 2 to 5 millimeter difference that you did in your pattern pieces. But this ironing is also going to help ease your collar into place, and it's also going to make the seams invisible. So that's the thing that you have to consider. And once you've done all of this, it's time to put your lining into place. That's also pretty straightforward, as everything is already sewn together. There's just this one long line that you have to sew together. It's basically sewing your facing onto your lining. This is going from the hem all the way over your neck facings down to the other side of your coat to the hem. And then you might notice that your coat is obviously still open in the hem area. There is a trick that I'm actually gonna explain in my ultimate guide on how to sew the lining into place, or how to finish the coat in general without having to hand sew anything. So you're actually gonna sew everything by machine up until the last seam and everything is closed. So you can go ahead and check that out if you're interested in that. And there is actually a small thing that goes onto the inside of your coat once your lining is in place. And you might notice, if you have your coat and you tuck on the underarm seam of your lining, it doesn't separate from the underarm seam of your outer body pattern. This is because there's actually, if you feel at it, there's actually a small band connecting both seams. This is not directly sewn together, but there's this small band which is just sewn into the seam allowance of both the outer pattern and the lining pattern, which is going to keep your lining of your sleeve in place. If you go out of your jacket, the sleeve won't come off, you know, it's just going to stay in place. The same thing is done on the shoulder area. Right here, you can separate the two pieces. They are also connected with a small band, so you always have to remember to put 4 bands in your jacket in general, 2 at the shoulder and 2 at the underarm, and you do that by connecting the seam allowances of both the lining and the outer body pattern pieces. And that's actually all there is to coats. Now, if you are interested in a very detailed and more in-depth version of this video, I said it already a million times, please check out my ultimate guide for jackets and coats. I will explain this and a lot more things, like lowering the armhole, this method on how to finish your coat without having to hand sew anything, how to sew the facing onto the lining in the hem area, because this is a bit different. I explain to you step by step everything that goes into making a coat, and on top of that, obviously, I'm explaining a few more color variations that you might want to check out. Interfacing guide is in there, sewing guide, sewing instructions, everything is in there. So I highly advise you to go and get that for yourself, as it is a very helpful guide. I also put pockets, by the way, into this whole thing. So, because pockets is something that I haven't talked about in this video at all, but I actually went ahead and made a guide for all the pockets that you commonly use, so inseam pockets, then patch pockets, and also pipe pockets. And I also made a tutorial step-by-step guide illustrated in my ultimate guide that you can just pop onto your coat however you want to. So I'll put a link down in the description as well for that, and I hope this video made it a bit easier on how to sew coats or jackets in general, and it gives you a bit more of a look into the whole sewing process of these types of garments. I would just suggest to make one and try all of these tips that I told you in this video and that are in the PDFs out by yourself, and you might find that it's actually not that hard, because you most likely get your own gist for all of these things. You get your own way of doing things while you're actually doing something. I know this feeling of being scared of a project and you think like, I can't do this, but I actually found that once I start a project and once I think by myself how to resolve a problem or an issue that I might have during the process, I actually managed to find a way. And that is my learning process. That is how I learn the easiest, by just doing it. And then obviously having tips and tricks like this on top of that is making everything so much easier as well. I am obviously also still looking into books and my notes that I took in university, because there are so many different things that I can't possibly remember all at the same time, and specific things that you might not need on a day-to-day basis in sewing, I obviously also don't know. So I am very, very thankful for having the guides, the notes, my books and stuff like this, and obviously also my experience to finish my garments. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope that you have a lot of takeaways that you can use for your next project. Might it be a coat or just something with a lining or a collar, whatever it might be. I quickly wanted to point out to just open the description box down there to get all the infos and all the links that I was talking about in this video. If you are looking for a visual guide on how to actually make a jacket in general, I am starting the chapter of jackets here on my channel now, so keep an eye out for next week's video, because I will be doing a jacket there, and I also have another project for a jacket. So there will be loads of visual guides and tutorials and videos on how to sew jackets and coats, but this video I guess is a good base for you to know how to make coats yourself, and I will build upon this basically for the next videos that I am uploading. If you have any other topics that I should be talking about in a video like this, leave a comment down below, and also leave me feedback how you like this class on coats, more or less, if I should do it more often. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring the bell to get notified every time I post, and I'm gonna see you next time. Bye guys!
Yeah.